On the verge of Susan Smith's parole hearing, the Union mayor, the town where she did what she did, speaks out about how she divided the town, and we're going to talk about his interview in today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. Sofa's back there. Bo and Luke were over there sleeping. And my name's Paul, and I'm sitting right here talking. If you're new here, well, that's my name, Paul. If you're not new here, well, guess what? My name's still Paul. Nothing's changed there. I hope y'all are doing well. And we're going to be revisiting today another quick update, another quick little topic to discuss about the Susan Smith case. And specifically what we're going to be doing today is actually looking at one thing that I find heartbreaking and devastating about these crimes are the, what I call like the outlay or the peripheral victims in the cases, right? And with Susan Smith, there's plenty of those, and especially the community, the town where she did this, where she came from, right? And so there's an interview that came out. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the news article, and then we're going to look at bits of the interview. This is with the town, the Union mayor, and he's discussing, he lived through it, and he's discussing what that was like, what Susan's actions did to kind of like racially divide things in this community while this was going on. Because remember, Susan Smith, if you're unfamiliar with the case, I'll give a quick 60-second little overview, whatever. Susan Smith was convicted of the murder of her two little boys. She took them to a lake. She let them roll like from the boat ramp into the lake and drown them. However, it was 9 days before she finally confessed to that. In the meantime, she said that basically a random black man did this, carjacked her and took the car. She gave a very generic description, and she fear-mongered that aspect. And so obviously the police are going to be like, well, what do we have to do? So they're going door to door, they're roughing people up, they're getting people out of bed, they're doing this and that, whatnot. So that's what this gentleman is going to be talking about today. And I just found it interesting because, again, when we follow these cases, obviously the victims, the people who lose their lives or are harmed, obviously by the perpetrator, are at the center of this. But then you start going on the outside of that, you have their family, their friends, whatnot, all the way down to communities. I mean, also like very recently, now luckily no one was murdered in this case, but if you look at the Carly Russell case, okay, Carly Russell she basically said that she was kidnapped. Turns out she was in a hotel room eating Cheez-Its, but her whole community came together looking for her, and then it was like, oh, a girlfriend's been in the hotel room eating Cheez-Its? And the distrust, the anger, the this, the that. So these crimes have an ongoing and very far reach, and what they do and how they affect people. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this article. I'm going to put the first thing up here on the screen. Now, this is by Jennifer Emmert. First of all, published on November 12th, 2024. And it says the title is Union Mayor Discusses Impact of Susan Smith Case on the City and Its Resilience. Let's go on to the first thing here. Now, again, this is Union, South Carolina. This article is from WLOS. And it says Union isn't unlike most small cities in South Carolina. It's got a lot of local hustle and bustle, according to Mayor Harold Thompson. So he describes Union as a progressive little town. And he, just goes into talk about how wonderful the citizens are of it, that they like to volunteer, they'll come in to help, like whatever you need, an organization or whatever, this town's going to come together. This is a very small town, and he will describe it as that. So just keep that in mind, and imagine how small it was back then, right? I mean, this is like a while ago, okay? He'll just imagine that level way back then, like things were much different, whatever. So everybody knows each other. If you don't personally know somebody's name, well, your best friend knows them too. That kind of a town, right? Very similar to like where I grew up. I would say it's smaller than where I grew up at, and I grew up in a small town, which is no longer really like a small town, okay? So anyways, it says that he took over as interim mayor in July 2008 when Union's former mayor, Bruce Morgan, resigned after being indicted on charges that he used his position to solicit contractor kickbacks. So he was elected in the fall of 2008 to fill the vacant position. Now, in the interview that we're going to watch, I don't know if I took this clip out or not, but I'll go ahead and say it because I'll forget. He talks about how Susan Smith's case, essentially like when it comes to like what Union's known for or like public outcry, he's like, that's what they go to. He's like, it overshadowed a lot of this corruption and stuff like that because it's just, this is what the town is kind of known for in the realm of bad stuff, right? And so it's almost like, so people were able to kind of hide in the shadows of Susan Smith and do their dirty work, if you will. Let's go on to that next page. Now here you'll see a picture of the mayor here. here, Mr. Harold Thompson. And again, we're going to look at a few clips of this interview in just a second. But it just goes on to say, he's lived in Union most of his life. I worked at a TV station in Spartanburg when Susan Smith knocked on the McLeod's door on October 25th, 1994. 9 days later, he was one of the first media members on the scene at John D. Long Lake in Union as Smith's car with her boys, Michael and Alexander, inside were pulled from their watery grave. So, yikes. Okay, so this man has been there, okay? I'm talking all angles of this, right? Now, the bottom thing just says here how he talked to News 13 about those 9 days in between as some of his friends were impacted by Susan's lies. Now, this next page, the second paragraph here, it just talks about how when Susan Smith ran to the McLeod's residence and falsely told them, the police, the public, hey, I was at this intersection, black man comes up, jumps in my car, makes me get out near the McLeod's home, takes off, boys are in the back seat. At the time of this, okay, even though in today's age, like with crimes, well, even now, like this would be like, you know how some crimes you see, again, I'll refer to Carly Russell, people are like, something's a little off with that, you know what I'm saying? But in this day and age where just the craziest things happen, you gotta, whatever. Back then, like, you didn't hear, like, this kind of stuff was like this level of Susan Smith. So somebody knocking on the door like that, talking about, like, oh, this random black man jumped in my car, he made me get out, and and he took the kids. It's like, okay, like, this is horrible, the kids are gone, we gotta do what we gotta do to find these kids, right? That's the first concern, okay? But it's odd. Most crimes like this, the person's not gonna want to take two small children with them, right? It's not, Diane Downs, okay? Like, people just aren't gonna, it's an extreme situation, okay? So anyway, so imagine the McLeods who lived through this from the very beginning of her knocking on the door talking about, oh my God, somebody just did this near your house, help me call 911. I mean, can you imagine how traumatic that would be to like go through your life with that imagery of like how Susan was acting? Man, I bet they've got some stories. I mean, can you imagine like being able to sit here and say, yeah, you know what, she acted kind of like this, or man, I didn't really believe her, or, looking back on it versus the moment of it. So anyways, let's keep going. The last paragraph here just talks about that regional, national, nationwide, search that went on for these children, right? And he meaning the mayor here, about how he had friends pulled out of their homes, questioned because they matched this description that Susan Smith gave the authorities. Now let's go to this next page in the first little paragraph here, and it says Thompson said the temperature in the small town was elevated during the search for the children, but he said when it was finally revealed Smith was responsible for Michael and Alexander's deaths, while the community was upset, it didn't get out of control. And I think I pulled this clip, but we'll go ahead and read this right here. He says it could have been a race thing, but deep down inside, most black people knew that it wasn't a black person that would probably do something like that, Thompson said. And he goes further down, he says, Thompson said an explanation from law enforcement that we had to do what we had to do to find the kids should have been given to Union's black community, but never was. And Thompson said Smith's impact has been something Union had to live with for 30 years now. And he'll go on down here. We'll just go ahead and quote him for this other thing too. It's part of what happened, I think it's gotten more attention than the corruption that we have with people stealing money from the town, he said. It's got more play than that, not from the people who are in town, but from people coming in. Now this bottom thing just goes into her, the parole and whatnot. Remember, she's up for parole, depending on when you're watching this. It's going to be November 20th, so it's either 2024, so it's either happened or is on the way to happen. Now, what we're going to do at this point is we are going to watch some of his interview and just talk about that.
Tight community.
If anybody call a name, a nickname, you would know about who that person was and what they looked like.
And this is what I'm referring to again, like for people who might not be from a super tiny town, or, if you are from a super tiny town, then you'll know. When somebody like Susan Smith pulls some number like this, like to this extreme, like you're going to know about it, right? Like I'm sitting here imagining like, what if this had happened in my town and they were going door to door? Like you would know the people whose doors they were rattling, right? And so that's where this was hardcore. I mean, this is what you'd want to talk about when you victimize a community with these horrible actions. Take out what her actions did to cause this ripple effect. Just the victimization of the community of learning that one of their members did something as heinous as this is horrifying. Think about like if you've ever been close to a crime happening like this, or a person, you know, something like this, or an accident or a tragedy, something of that flavor. When it's close to you, it hits very differently, right? And so even though if people aren't like related to these, you know, to the boys or Susan or David or, you know, the people involved, when it's that close to home, it just hits different. This disturbs so many people in the general public and still does decades later. So you can only imagine what this had to be like for the community in the moment, with the entire nation's video cameras coming to town to capture this, right? I cannot imagine.
What really struck me when they said that she had said a black man had taken her kids, and next thing you know, police were going to houses late at night, early in the morning, or whenever, because the description that she gave could have fit a lot of people.
Now, I will stand by this right here. 150%. If they had found somebody and it had gotten to the point like where she had pulled this off to the point of being like, Susan, is this it? There would be someone already dead, on death row, or incarcerated for life at her hands. She 100%. Can't tell me any different, right? If she had gotten the chance to put an innocent man behind bars, she was going to take it. And that's what's scary about this, like what he's talking about. Like they're going door to door, get out of bed, wake up, where's the kids, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? And the whole time, it's Susan who did it, right? Now, granted, the cops didn't know that right at first, right? I get that. And this gentleman seems to have a very like even keel perspective on it. Like, look, the kids are, you know, you got to do what you got to do. These kids are gone, like, you know, an apology would have been nice, but, you know, it is what it is kind of a thing, right? Let's keep going.
And I knew a guy, one of the guys that the description, they kind of got him up and out of the bed or what have you, and because he fit the description, but it wasn't him.
Again, thank God it didn't get to the level where Susan had the power to say point fingers or whatever. She was very messy about this, and police knew almost right away from the interview to the just her describing what took place. Again, this is very odd, and people who I don't know what you call it, like in the profession, the judicial, you know, law enforcement, whatnot, they know a story like this it's like an outlier, right? Some random dude carjacked you and took your kids and got you out of the car. Seriously, like, okay, well, let's move forth, but that's not passing like the sniff test. Okay, something smells a little bit fishy here. And just like this gentleman here saying, like, I knew somebody. Like, imagine like your friend's getting roasted up and you're like, yeah, that's so-and-so. Like, there's no way. You know what I mean? But again, when something like this happens, the cops are just going to start going door to door and, hey, look, you kind of fit this description. Susan knew what she was doing, okay? She knew what she was doing. She was using that whole generic thing right there to completely throw an innocent, like a would-be innocent man behind bars. Probably what she was hoping, and this is, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a cop, not any of that fancy stuff. Only credentials I got is the sofa, some sass, and self-diagnosed personality disorders, okay? So this is just my opinion. I think what she wanted to do was she wanted to drown the kids in the car. Remember, she was trying to get with the dude, the rich dude, who didn't want kids, right? So she was going to drown the kids, probably thinking they would be there forever. Give a generic fear-mongering description of random black man. Have the cops arrest said random black man. She points the finger. If they ever find the kids, oh, well, he drowned them. No DNA, it's in the water. You see what I'm saying? And who knows, could have gotten away with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, please. So I think that's probably what she was doing. Or say they get the random black man at her, you know, description, never find the car, but nonetheless she's gonna just say stuff up, nope, it was him, you know, that kind of thing. Or they don't find the dude, they never found the kids, it doesn't go anywhere. But again, obviously she was not swift, okay, about this at all. Thank the Lord.
Did that kind of cause a divide in the community at all? Or?
It did, and a lot of people run from that part of it, because especially after they found out, after they got a confession from her, I had people, you know, just you know, people that worked in plants and stuff like that. You know, somebody in the one story was a guy in the plant said, well, when they catch whoever it is, need to take him and hang him up at the courthouse.
And this is what I'm talking about. When this kind of scenario here, like Susan's boogeyman, right? Of like, oh, this random black man came and did all this and blah, 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 blah. She creates this divide, this major racial divide here, and like this gentleman here saying, he's being very, like, in my opinion, chill about the whole thing or whatever. And you hear him saying like, oh, they're going to take him up and hang him up at the courthouse and this, that, and the other and blah, 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 blah. Again, if Susan had her way, she would 100% have let this happen. 100%, right? Would probably be like, wouldn't even blink twice and would sleep sound that evening, okay? I personally believe that that's the level of monster that she was and is capable of. I don't know the woman. I don't know her now. I know that she claims that she was having a mental moment or whatever. I don't believe that at all. I think that it was just simply what it was. She wanted this dude and she was concerned about herself, and this is the way to get it, and she was going to throw someone under the bus, and she didn't care what it did or who it was or what it did to the community.
Hang him at the courthouse. And people were out looking for the kids, horseback riders, anybody, people just looking for the kids and stuff like that. And when she confessed that, to what she had did, it left a bad taste in people's mouths, because especially some of the people that they just kind of jostle out of bed or whatever during that particular time, and just a simple apology to the community would have gone a long way.
Now that part right there, where he's saying like, okay, here this is, whether you live through this or not, like, or whatever, but the moment of realization, and this is coming from somebody who doesn't live in Union, is not from there, but just, and that also was very young at this time, when the realization came out that Susan did this, I mean, y'all, I'm talking about, you could have probably heard the gasp across America. It was that shocking. So imagine if you were like this dude talking right here, one of those dudes that got woken up at 2 a.m, roughed up, rustled out of bed, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, like, she did this? What? Like, the level of, like, because there was already so much anger towards her at large, and that's coming from just the public in general, right? Not anyone who had something, like this dude's friends or whatever, right? So yeah, it would have been very appropriate, I feel like, obviously for Susan, right? But also for law enforcement, which is what the gentleman says. He's like, look, it would just be nice. He goes further. I don't know if I took the clip out or not. If he's like, not the community, but like just law enforcement to be like, hey, you know what? We were trying to find those kids. We had to do what we had to do, but we're sorry. You know what I'm saying? But they never got that. And of course, you're not going to get an authentic version of that from Susan, because she was probably upset that she couldn't throw somebody under the bus to take the spot for her.
Did the town maybe not handle it so great back then
think
because they just didn't want to talk about it?
I think the town handled it great, better than any other town would have handled it, because, it really could have got out of control. Could have been a race thing, but,
And you hear him say, I mean, he's giving them props. Like, nope, they handled it better than a lot of towns would. This, like he said, this could have gone way out, more out of control, right? Then clearly is out of control. She killed her 2 children and blames it on a random person, okay? But this could have caused a serious situation in Union, okay? With the way that all the things he just described. So I think he has a really level-headed way of looking at this. And again, there's, 30 years in between. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lifetime that's happened in between that. Let's go on to the last clip here, and then we'll talk about some final thoughts.
Because, the people that they were hounding, we know them. I knew 1 or 2 of the guys, and everybody else knew them, and they knew what kind of person they was. So they wouldn't have done something like that. But like I said, a little, just to say, we're sorry that we had to do what we had to do to try to find those kids. And, just an apology would have helped.
Was there ever an apology to the Black community?
Not to my knowledge.
So there you go. And, like you said, just a simple little like, hey, we had to do what we had to do, that type thing. And again, it's fascinating to me to hear the perspectives when you go into these, let's say, infamous crimes, right, that have just been earmarks in our history or whatever. And to hear the perspective of the variety of people, from the town to the victims' families to people like this, of just what happened. And I mean, I don't mean that in like a morbid way, like of hearing like the negative part or whatever, but just hearing the human element of it, how this affected a variety of people, but also how people overcame stuff. You know, listening to him talk, he number one has this like very like comforting, like grandfatherly kind of vibe, right? I mean, the man probably is a grandfather, right? So he has that kind of like energy about him, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like that kind of like, you know, confident, whatever, but like that wisdom that he's gleaming from this of like, you know what, it could have been this, they did a good job, yeah, this part would have been nice. He's just very like emotionally mature, I guess you could say, and is just, you know, I like what he had to say. So again, Susan's up for parole. Do not think it will happen. You know, and again, when you look at these kind of things like this interview and his, just as just one man's narrative, we haven't heard from the dude it happened to. Now, he did say like one of the people died during COVID. Again, it's like a long time ago, right? So imagine all those kind of people speaking at her parole hearing or have written in or something like that, okay? That's what I mean. Like when you sit here and talk about like giving someone parole and doing this, you know, in this case specifically, no, Susan has continued to do stuff behind bars, but not only was her crime insanely heinous, but it affected the entire community, right? And so you kind of have to look at that of like, okay, well, what all did this do? I mean, it divided the community and could have literally put it into like a severe situation. In addition to obviously the things that she did to her two boys, okay? Like I get that. So we shall see. Again, I don't think she'll get the parole. I don't think they'll ever let her out. I think politically, and I said this in my last video, but I'll say in this again too, I think that this is part political and part is just so insanely heinous that there's no way, right? Even if she, I think I said, you know, she cured cancer, did this and did that, they ain't letting her out, okay, period. Then you just get to the political aspect. It would be political absolute upheaval if somebody was like, if the governor was like, okay, sure, you can, we're gonna let her out. Come on, right? It's not gonna happen, right? So that's it. If you're still watching, I do appreciate it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. And that's it. So until we meet up for the next time, well, you know what? Actually, could you drop some little sofas off down there? For me, Rosco and Spirit and Bo and Luke, they've been sitting over there real nice. Yeah, but that way we'll have a place to sit, hang out on the sofa in the comment section and talk about this case and all the other ones we do talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we meander our way on down to that comment section, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. Also, if you're looking for merch, be sure to check out my Teespring store. I'll put that up here. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.